Welcome to the Capstone Conversation, where you learn about what's happening in the greater East Bay. I am your host, Jared Ash. Today, we are following up on a series on how AI is evolving and GovTech companies are looking for solutions for state and local government. Last week, we had on a councilman from Fairfield who works in technology, talking about his perspective on innovation. Today, we're going to hear from two innovative companies and how they are helping innovate local government. First, we have Parth Shah from Polymorphic, and we have Brandon Levy from Ichi here, one out of New York, one out of the Bay Area, talking about how GovTech is evolving. Parth, can you go first? Give us how you see, before we talk about Polymorphic, talk about how you see AI evolving in the GovTech space and how it can benefit local cities.
I'll start by saying I am in New York now. I grew up in Southern California and lived in the Bay Area for a long time, so I got a lot of love for the area. And we obviously got customers like Pacifica, so very exciting always to hear folks in the Bay Area. But I think the big opportunities, what we hear a lot from cities, counties, state agencies we work with, right, is AI is something we hear all the time in the news. I think the private sector is really looking at AI to create efficiencies, and I think there's been concerns with taking that one for one into government for a variety of reasons. But there's value to efficiency, right? There's a ton of value to being able to provide great customer service more efficiently. But I think where I'm really excited about AI in government is also in enabling new outcomes. And we work with the county surrogate court. Surrogate Casanova is fantastic, one of the great leader around AI. And we've done a lot with voice AI and chat, and I'm sure we'll get to more of the company side. But one of the really interesting things that they were able to do with our AI solution was one of the first weeks they launched kind of our voice application to answer questions and help people navigate government services with the surrogate court. Someone had a 12-minute conversation in Bengali, and they have no one in their office who speaks Bengali. We think about efficiency a lot in the private sector, but this was another thing. There's not really an efficiency here. It was one 12-minute conversation that actually stood out the most out of the hundreds we handle. But what it was is a new service. It's a constituent that falls within the Passaic County lines, needed a service from the surrogate court, which handles really important stuff like in estates. And that's really where I'm excited about what AI can do, which was this is a new service. It's probably the first time in the entire country someone had done this with AI. We were the first to kind of launch something like that. And that's really the stuff that gets us excited. And we're seeing excitement from the government is how can we provide better customer service or provide service to more individuals or go deeper with our engagement. I think that's really where I'm looking to where AI is going now with governments.
Brandon, do you want to build upon that?
We operate in a different space. Everything for us is around construction or like on the government side, working with building departments, community development, fire prevention teams, and the like. When we peel back the layers of the onion at the most foundational level, what we see is it's extremely high complexity and really challenging communication that exists. There's just not enough people to do the work. We operate in an industry where the complexity is going up substantially, and it's a licensed and skilled trade often to do these jobs. And there's people that are retiring much faster than people are coming in. It's actually like an average age is close to 60 years old. There's pinch points here where it's less of a choice. Like people, we have to be able to evolve in order to meet the demands of the community. And it's been quite interesting to us seeing the different cases that come out because the just being able to enable people to navigate like a really complicated space in a way that's much easier and more accessible for them to do otherwise helps them provide a better quality of service to their communities. Because a common challenge that exists is it just takes a long time to get answers to complicated questions that can block projects from getting built. Like one kind of like simple problem. And AI has opportunities in many forms to just bridge that gap. And I think like Part's example of the language barrier is an excellent one. We actually see the same thing of inspectors talking to contractors out in the field and they disagree on a code item, but they also don't speak the same language. How do you bridge that gap on the communication side and the complexity of the code to actually enable that project to move forward in minutes instead of days? And I think there's a lot of really interesting intersections there with government.
Yeah. Let's take a minute and step back. Brandon, why don't you tell us about your background and a little bit about Ichi, and then we'll go with parts.
My background, I've been in technology for about 20 years. I used to work at a DOE national lab and then started a couple of small brands at night. The fun anecdote, like to share in stories, is first or second brand started, actually met a guy in an airplane on Christmas Eve in 2007. And we ended up living 6 blocks from each other and started a business, a mobile accessories business back in the day. Anyways, long story short, that turned into a software business that we ran for 10 years, building tools for brands and retailers. We sold that to Square in 2020, and then I worked at managing aspects of our platform there for a bit. My background from a technology perspective is there. However, growing up, I grew up in construction. My dad had an HVAC business for about 40 years of my life, and truly my first memory is going to job sites with him when I was 5, or I got to start working in the sheet metal shop when I was 9. I just really love the industry. And had this mixture of like technology and construction. And even though I haven't worked in construction in a long time, it feels a lot like coming home in terms of Ichi. So Ichi is a business where we're focused on of the future to be built better, faster, more efficiently. And we believe this is a huge problem space. Construction is one of the largest industries in the world. But fundamentally, we see an intersection with AI as a helpful tool and co-pilot alongside the humans in order to make this possible. And with the evolution of this technology, there's a lot of things that couldn't be done even 2 or 3 years ago that are possible today. And part of what I think is important that I note in terms of Ichi, and I'm not getting into specifically what we do, but what we find really interesting is we have customers that are government customers. And we also have customers that are what we call commercial, like architecture firms, real estate developers, and the like. And it's the intersection of those two and how AI and communication tools can help facilitate those interactions that a lot of the magic happens in terms of where people are able to see a step function change and what they're able to do today compared to what they could do a couple of years ago, enabling buildings to get built better or at least to have lower animosity in the process and for any type of construction process.
Do you want to tell us more about Polymorphic and your background and how you became to found this company?
Yeah, happy to share that. My background's a little bit kind of roundabout in some ways and its path to local government, but it actually ties together in a much, much deeper way. I'm an engineer by training. I started my career doing electrical engineering, computer science at MIT, really focused on AI. And we thought it was the big thing back then. It feels like it's 1,000 times bigger now. I ran the machine intelligence community at MIT for 2 years and then spent some time at NVIDIA and was going to go full time, but found a great opportunity in the smart city space. And it was a fascinating company. We're working with the city of Boston on a variety of initiatives, really trying to nail down on how you could use data to build a safer city. When you do planning and things like that, a lot of it is you look at the map and kind of decide if a stop sign should go here, a traffic light should go there, and not necessarily using car collision data to inform, hey, maybe this will lead to a reduction or something like that. Very interesting project. There's maybe 30 cities in the country that we found actually deeply cared about that. But as part of spending time with Boston, what I started to see was how challenging that customer service was. And that reminded me kind of my family background is in this world as well. My grandfather was a utility director his whole career. My grandmother worked in state government doing marriage licenses. But I think a lot of the technology world and engineers often don't appreciate how complicated customer service in government is. And I would argue that government really is a customer service organization first and foremost, right? Whether you're applying for permits or there's a pothole on your road to a lot of the counties we work with, food and nutrition services, adult Medicaid, almost every critical service we rely on is handled at some level by our local and state government. And it's complicated, right? Most constituents don't know if it's a city, county, or state service. Even if you know what agency is going to handle it, you go to a county website and there's 20 different departments, hundreds of pages you could go to. No fault of the county at all. It's just they offer so much. And that's really where Polymorphic's focused. Our whole thing is we're building what we call an AI concierge, right? So everyone's seen the chatbots with the airlines or the voice attendants, and they're no good, right? They don't really work. And the reason is they don't actually understand the content. We're exclusively focused on government. We have special algorithms for how we work with like code and utility systems and have integrations with a lot of things. But the basic idea being if you call in, you go to the website, you email, you text, We offer that kind of AI concierge, AI white glove, right? Answering your question, getting you pointed to the right resource. And then from there, we have all these amazing tools to help staff actually help deliver that service faster. How do you manage inquiry volume in public works? There's huge opportunities for AI to start streamlining that customer service operations as well. And that's the two sides of the coin we think about, making that constituent experience really great, 75 languages, any place you reach out, instant answers 24/7. And then for staff, how do you take these services that take many internal emails, tons of time to manage internally, and compress that into something that's a lot easier so you can focus on what's important? To Brandon's point, hiring is really hard. There's this wave of retirement that's coming. And I think it's very scary for most city managers, councils who are thinking ahead of. We've heard counties that went from 2,900 employees to 2,400 employees just from retirements. People's demands are only rising. We have less and less capacity. Our big vision is how do we help fill that gap?
And that's a great point because it's not just the retirement, but in meeting after meeting I'm going to with city managers and council people in California, at least, they're talking about long-term tax revenue changing because the way we purchase things in America is shifting. City revenue in the next 10 years will continue to decrease, especially in smaller cities that haven't grown in long times without big shopping hubs. And they can't replace those staff that are retiring, but they're going to want to use technology. How are you preparing for all of that? Brandon, your product goes to the heart of this. You're looking specifically, I believe, at planning departments, community development departments, helping them improve those turnaround times and services.
Yeah, and to clarify, thanks for pointing that out. Like our focus are on all the roles within the building departments, planning teams, fire prevention teams. What that would look like are what's called permit techs, which are counter staff that may be answering questions for the community, fielding emails, fielding phone calls, inspectors who are out in the field inspecting jobs, following up with violation letters or approval notices, plan examiners. Those are folks that are actually reviewing construction documents, ensuring that they are meeting compliance and the like. And so I'll start on the labor side. As noted, I'd say yes to what you said, where you have this like polarization or these two different poles where you have a more senior member of staff who may not be as tech savvy, has a really strong foundation in the construction code because they've been doing it for 30 years and understand aspects of the job. But the codes change every few years, if not more frequently. And so their ability to actually keep up with those changes and construction complexity is going up becomes really hard for them. The more junior members of the staff, the thing that we often hear people explain is that person that had 30 years of experience, they started with code books that were this thick. Today, literally, if you buy them and put them on a shelf, it's about your wingspan. And if you think of the amount of information that, say, that 22-year-old or 25-year-old has to know and learn to become competent and proficient, enabling them to do the plan review or do the inspections, it's so much higher. And where do they get that information from? They either have to spend an extraordinary amount of time researching it. They're talking to the more senior people on their team or the building officials or director of planning to help answer those questions. And all of that has a systemic impact on reducing the amount of time that they can actually spend to do the work. I'd say the most, like a simple example, but one that really highlights this is one question that a member of the community or an architect or whoever has for a city related to the code around their construction projects. One email can take 20 to 30 minutes to write and respond to. And it's because these emails are highly technical. They're filled with complex information. The level of accuracy that's required to justify the rationale of why someone would need to do something is really high, because to provide I really appreciate what Part said, and it's a customer service orientation, quality of service to the community. It's not by saying, no, you can't do this. It's by saying, no, you can't do this because it violates this, and here's like the codes that are related to that, and give that individual the information they need to research and remedy that particular situation. That's a really thoughtful exercise, and it's hard. And combining all these components together, like where our tool focuses or where we see a lot of help for people, is like literally enabling permit techs to get information to the community faster. And oftentimes they have to have approvals from plan examiners or building officials or senior members of the staff. Enabling those plan examiners to take the rote parts of their job, not necessarily automating away parts of their job, but take those rote parts and make them really fast and efficient. And same thing with the inspectors out in the field, like literally taking AI combined with language translation services of an inspector that speaks English and a contractor that speaks Cantonese and allow them to navigate across one of those topics and unblock the project from moving forward in minutes instead of hours or days. Like all of these changes of these delays have a systemic impact and add up in order for them to be able to complete work. The last thing that I would say, it's not for lack of effort that we're finding cities not be able to hire. It's not even for lack of budget. There are cities that we work with. Some of them are like the top 10 largest cities in California that 25% of the headcount in their building departments and planning teams are understaffed and they have budget for it. It's literally can't get the people in seat.
The supply is just not there.
100%. Yeah. And what you bring up of taxes and all this other stuff are just extra layers on this cake.
Yeah.
And I will say to Brandon's point, I think it's wishful thinking to think that this is going to be just remedied in 3 to 4 years. I in fact would argue it's only going to get worse. The supply isn't there, right? There are less people coming into government every year than there are folks who are readying for retirement. And that is inevitable. I think if you're a city, you really have to think about, okay, we used to have 100 folks to do all these tasks. Now we're probably going to have 70. How do I make those 70 people focus on the parts of the job that are actually they're more excited about? You might end up increasing retention too. In our case, a really common one is our voice agent is probably one of the most popular. We're the first to launch something of its nature. Basically, idea is you call in as a constituent, it can answer all your questions, route you to the right departments. If it's a department, it can reply on status requests. If I'm asking on my utilities, what's my account balance or what's the status of my case, it can even report that by integrating with certain systems. The turnover for a front desk role is generally 12 months, like within 12 months turnover. And I was talking to a city manager in Florida who got from the council, like, hey, we're having a huge problem turning over these roles, et cetera. Can y'all look into it? And everyone in leadership was trying to figure out, like, why can't we retain this role? Or why is it so hard to retain some of these roles? And he did this crazy thing. He said, you know what? I'm going to be I'm going to do that job for a week. He does the job for a week and he's on the phones. It's just like 50 to 70% of the questions are the same repeat questions. And it's questions like, what is the address for this department? Or I have a question here and I'm calling the wrong division and they don't realize it, right? Press 9. Folks don't know which department handles what. They end up in the wrong department. That's the volume of it. We're talking about millions of dollars of staff time spent on this. He spends a week doing it, comes back to council, and the report is, I'm surprised we're retaining anyone at all. Because the truth is, everyone who's talented, we have all these other open positions that we'd love to promote them into, and we're spending a ton of time on these simple questions. Even the more important kind of customer service is a small percentage of time. How do you think about how AI can act as a tool that way? If AI can handle that 70% of questions that are repeat the commonplace ones, which is what we're doing, one, staff's able to focus on the more interesting things. Constituents are able to get answers a lot quicker. The third one, which no one's really talking about, is the retention's better, right? It's a more satisfying, more fun job because I didn't sign up to answer where XYZ department is located 20 times in a week. That's not why I signed up to work in government. I signed up to work in government to help my community when someone has a more complicated question or need, or a lot of these front desk roles in larger organizations, it's really frustrating for them because they tell us we spend 50% of our calls transferring them to other departments. It's like a switchboard operation. And it's just one of those situations which is, you can empathize with how it happens, right? Which is a constituent, they're not going to know the nuance of what community development handles versus public works versus economic development. That means nothing to them, right? They think of everything as this is a city of Pacifica or this is a city of San Francisco. As staff, then, it's also really challenging because without tools like voice AI, things that we're enabling, your best solution is either we have someone who's literally dedicated to routing calls, or people are just going to end up in the wrong departments, and that staff is going to have to reroute you to the right place. It's frustrating all around, and I think that's where there's opportunities. It's going to be a huge value for that 70 folks of the 100 that you are able to retain. They're going to be happier, going to be more productive, they're going to work on more important things. It's frankly a no-brainer from investing in your existing staff.
I like how you sell it as an investment in staff. Some of the cities we talk to, there's a nervous, like, we don't want to see the union as showing that we're going to take jobs away or transition jobs. But what we're saying is we want to save you 2 to 3 hours on the phones each day answering the question of how do I get my pothole fixed? And you want them to do more substantive work. But that is a large, nervous part of any city negotiation. I don't know if either one of you want to tackle that and how you're dealing with that issue about labor protecting the way things, the status quo.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. They're one of the largest cities in California, gave us a verbal yes to move forward, and their union started to balk at that, plus other AI tools that they were using. The reality of what we're seeing is there's fear. I think there's fear of AI taking jobs away because people think about it in a hyperbolic way of either it can't do what I need it to do or it's going to automate my job away and I'm not going to have any work. Don't get me wrong. It's a fundamental shift going on where a lot of our jobs are changing, even my own and how I work. But in reality, I have not seen any job be taken away by the tools that we're building. What I am seeing is building officials report that their junior members of the team are getting up to speed 2 to 6 times faster to move from permatech roles into plan review roles, which also creates opportunity for them to have 25K or more of additional salary of moving up to a higher skilled job compared to what they were before. That's a huge change. I'm hearing people feeling like they're not as bogged down with. Be surprised how many government workers are actually logging into our tool on Saturday and Sunday to catch up on some of their work because they're just bogged down from the week. Overall, just like their satisfaction in their role and reducing burnout, it's actually really positive. And I don't want to leave a message like no jobs are changing. And I think there's a lot of administrative tasks that are going to be more and more automated and the like. But the reality is like when done well, it's a tool to help up level people's skills, not to take their job away on whole, at least in terms of like our approach to AI.
Brandon framed that really well. I would say, we haven't run into that as much because I think a lot of folks understand that. Anyone who thinks through this a little bit and is really invested in staff experience too, and that's an important part of their role. And so I think they really, in a lot of cases, they recognize it. I think the fear is, frankly, it's to what I said in the beginning, right? The private sector narrative has been so around efficiency, and I've really been trying to explain, like, with government's different. We have an opportunity, right? I don't think if you asked any city, hey, we're going to save you 50% of your administrative work with some of our AI solutions on customer service. I don't think anyone is, oh, we don't know what to do with that time we've gotten back, right? It's actually, there's a million things that are actually like in the backlog that they've wanted to do for years, like Parks and Rec departments want to throw more events in their park, right? You want to get more things built if you're in like community development. So I think that is what we're seeing from the savvier, the folks who understand, right? And we're willing to engage in that kind of education. We're almost always after that education piece, people get it, right? So many jobs are you do things because you have to do them. And I would argue that phone call example I'm giving is one of those things, which is you just have to do it, right? You had to pick up the phones. There's so many calls sometimes they can't even get around to it. Like we're talking to state agencies where they are contracting out call centers and still can't get around to it. It's like there's no way to manage that volume. You look at the retention challenges, the challenges with folks' satisfaction. We really got to ask ourselves, what are the roles government staff really want to do? What are the things that they're excited about? And unfortunately, I think government has been one of these industries that's been hard to hire in because 90% of the time has been spent on operational rote work and that creative work. And I think this is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to do all the things that staff have always wanted to, all the initiatives that a city or county you've always wanted to do, but you can't because you don't have the time. Yeah, I don't think any jobs are really going to change in terms of folks being let go of or anything. I think you can't hire right now. That's a whole other thing that's going to get worse. I think that the real thing is to what Brandon's saying is there will be some change. I'll change what I spend my time on, the kind of activities I get to spend time on. But I would argue that a lot of that is stuff that people have been waiting for 15 years. Like they've been wanting this change. It's just been impossible to pull off because I get the phone calls of people asking what the address is of the department. I have to answer that. But I sure wish I didn't have to. And all that to echo Brandon's, I think most people we're running into, they get it and they're savvy and they understand. I think most of the roadblocks, those will change too. People understand. And at the end of the day, job is to invest in as a laborer, On the labor side, your goal is to make sure that your members, they have a great experience, that they have a great staff experience. And I don't think we'd be sending people out to do construction without safety jackets in cars. It's the same thing, it's just a different role. Car
Yeah.
makes you more efficient. Is that a reason we don't let people drive because it requires less people time to get to the job site? Definitely not. Same idea, just different context.
Brandon, why don't you talk a little bit more, maybe give a use case example about how Ichi's technology is helping cities improve?
Oh, how helping cities improve.
Yeah.
The value propositions that we sell on are all around saving time and reducing aggravation. That's what it comes down to. And from a saving time, share a couple of it is a real example of an inspector out in the field who spoke English working with a contractor who is speaking Cantonese, who was having a disagreement about a particular code issue. And they not only couldn't see eye to eye on the code, they were just having a really hard time communicating. And in that situation, the inspector may just write something up and then the contractor has to go figure it out as best as they can. Or the inspector goes back to their desk and hours or days later sends follow-up email. They go back and forth clarifying what this issue is to eventually be able to get the contractor what they need in order to move forward on the job. Keep in mind, let's just imagine it's a simpler project like a home remodel. If that inspector or that contractor is waiting on that so that they could say, yes, we can cover the walls with drywall, like literally every other trade is going to be backed up. The difference is in our case, the inspector pulled out his phone, opened up Ichi. He had the contractor speak Cantonese into his phone. The contractor told Ichi to respond in English and Cantonese, and they were able to get each of the answers that they needed. And a big challenge that exists in construction is there's such a broad set of codes. There's state codes, there's municipal codes, there's standards, there's laws, all this type of stuff. Is there's direct links in the tool to the exact language of the code juxtaposed with all the AI interpretation or AI responses that exist. And the ability for the professional, like the inspector or contractor, to validate and be able to read that exact text is also available in seconds instead of Google searches, which can also lead to a lot of inaccurate information. What would have been a days-long type of thing is something that get resolved in less than 5 minutes, and they were able to see eye to eye and move forward. And it was much less emotional. The inspectors can have literally 8 to 10 jobs to go to in a single day around a large geographic area, and they need to do a high-quality job plus follow-ups on all of these. And then contractors are really feeling a lot of pressure from the owners who want to get the jobs done. They want to get people moved in, occupy the building. Maybe it's a developer who's trying to get a tenant in for their new restaurant or whatever it happens to be. There's an enormous amount of pressure. And when you have a cauldron of pressure with complexity and challenging communication, of course, people get frustrated. And when an inspector can actually have a situation and be like, wow, you have that, like your heart racing. Oh man, I'm going to have this like terrible interaction and they're just going to yell at me about something. And you can just see eye to eye on something in 5 minutes that previously would have been a real bear to deal with. You just get happier people. And just one additional example, and I'll hop off the soapbox, is one of our first customers was from city of San Luis Obispo, and their senior plan examiner noted that after 3 weeks of using Ichi, he was receiving 50% as many questions from their internal staff. And when he did, they were of higher and richer quality. And that was really awesome. But also what his manager, the building official, said is he had to leave or he was out for a few weeks. And when he came back, the senior plan examiner was literally more prepared for meetings, was just like happier. They found that a lot of this like rote stuff that they would typically talk about and spend hours on, they could cover in minutes or seconds. And that just created an actual change of how the department was able to operate, of just like literally in a better emotional state, which is, I think what Parth was talking to is like 100% on point. And that's a really important part of the quality of the work that we do, but the quality of how we feel about the work that we do too.
Yeah, that's great. Parth, you want to share an example or two, dive a little bit more into depth about the products and use case?
Yeah, 100%. We're fortunate to work with, I think, 300 departments across the country now, from city, county, up to state agencies. Probably have seen one of the biggest spreads of AI use cases, which is fun to say. One that comes to mind recently that was really, there's two areas that have been especially interesting to me. One is there's a lot of change right now happening at the federal level on the health and human services side. And California is one of the states where it's a county administered. North Carolina and New Jersey, very similar. And what's really interesting. One of the counties we work with in New Jersey, they were telling us that they miss 6,000 calls a month. And I was shocked at just the volume of that number. They handle, I think, hundreds of thousands in a year. Just the volume is unbelievable. And one of the things that they mentioned was we get emails, calls. One, really excited about the AI concierge for that. But the second piece was on the health side, they have a ton of different like inspections, workflows, things that they do, right? Applications. Like you can file complaints as a odor complaints if you're a constituent or a city. They ended up using our workflows with the AI together. And I thought what was really interesting was one, it obviously makes the application experience a lot better, but they started thinking about where they can get value in terms of even like reimbursements. The state like reimburses caseworkers a lot higher and they're short caseworkers, but they have all these front desk folks who want to be caseworkers. And they're thinking about how we can start to fill up the caseworkers by easing the load on the front desk side. I think the other thing is the error rates are becoming tighter and tighter. And now they had to do multiple interviews a year and more time of your caseworker is going to actually spend on interviewing than ever before. And where are you going to get those hours back? I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff, and I could spend a million hours on health and human services and some of the exciting stuff we're doing there. And the second category that comes to mind is actually similar to on the other side of the coin at Brandon's world. We work with a few counties in Florida, and one of the use cases we're seeing, Florida has a ton of building going on, ton of construction. Their plan reviewers don't get enough time on plan review because they get so many calls from constituents on questions about where's the status of my application? Where is this? And we integrate with their tools there, but at least like those basic calls we can get off their desks. They can focus on more complex things. But that's the kind of stuff where we think about that comprehensive engagement. We just heard a story from one of our customers in Colorado where their front desk was like, I feel like less calls. And I was like, that is a great data point, right? We can measure all the data, we can show all the value, the hundreds, thousands of hours we're saving. But when you start to hear from staff, like that phone that's always ringing, it doesn't feel as annoying right now, or I'm feeling less. I feel that pressure, the burden going down. That's a really exciting feeling for us, right? It's like you can see value, and it's so noticeable. You can just tell within a week, oh my God, it's so much better. I have less calls coming in.
I want to ask about if you were talking directly to a city manager, a mayor, a procurement director, and there was some hesitation. We've all had these. There's early adopters of AI tech, and then there's people who are scared to even take a meeting and learn about it. What would you tell them to learn about to get an understanding, right? Other than meeting directly with one of you, what's a tip you can give in terms of educating them about how not to be fearful of technology? Brandon, if you want to go, and then Parth.
Oh, I don't know, really simplistic or myopic. It's actually just try it. I think there's a high degree of fear of the unknown. And going back to what I said before, I think there's a lot of uncertainty and hyperbolic perspectives of, oh my gosh, this is going to automate everything. And it's a tool just like anything else. And we all have to kind of get used to using it and what is it like and where it seems and all of that. I think one thing I would point to is just like, if you're worried about it for your own city or your own staff or whatnot, is just try something and start to play with it. I've yet to have anybody try it and be like, oh my gosh, it's like Terminator and everything is going to be bad or something. It's usually, oh, I didn't realize I could do this thing. And I tried it on this and it wasn't actually that good at that. And is there a way I could make that better? And I think that like curious and just don't be afraid to play a little bit. It can be really fun. That's a different kind of an answer than, hey, go look at these. Here's a whole bunch of case studies of examples of where people are doing it and empirical evidence of why it's possible. I think that's an important part as well. But I think when I think of the shift that I see in people's minds, it's usually because they've had a chance to just play a little bit. That stems a lot of the fears.
I think Brandon covered a big one, which is try it, right? Once you use things, sometimes we have this fear of what we don't understand or don't know. And trying it is getting rid of that. The second one, I think, is just perspective, which is, I don't have the quotes on me. I was trying to find them, but I have this slide sometimes where I go through and I'm like, here's what people are saying about AI. And it's like these quotes of, this is going to be like the most failure of an invention, or this is going to be a bad change for everything. And then I'm like, is that what you're hearing too? And they'll be like, yeah, that's how I feel. And we'll go to the next slide. And it's like, no, these are quotes from like when the phone was invented. And this was someone quoting the internet coming out. It's like we have this natural fear of what's new. I think government is really embracing AI. I think the minority is actually fearful of it. I think the majority of folks are actually really embracing it, but I think that's part of it, right? It's just like new is unknown. And I think that try it. No one's asking for you to know all the intricacies tomorrow. I think it's like the internet and the phone, right? There was a time where they're scary and now we just like accept it's like a part of our lives, right? And I would say it's a good thing, right? It's a good part of our lives. I'd say those are the two big things. Perspective, try it, try to demystify the unknown, and then spend time with folks who know about it, right? And who are willing to talk about it outside of the product, right? One thing we do, we've often come into councils and just talked about AI, but with nothing about polymorphic, just, hey, what is it? How does it work? And I think that helps people really understand how it can make sense for governments. Drop that fear significantly.
Yeah. And I'll add just into the example of embracing technology is I was talking to a chancellor of a college here in California, and she said that when ChatGPT first came out, a professor, oh, this is a joke. It's never going to be the same. Nobody's ever going to use this. 18 months later, they had to start working really fast to incorporate it into education because the students were using it, because all of a sudden in that 18 months, it went from this joke of a product to a life tool that everybody is using. Any closing thoughts before we head out that you guys want to share, including how to find more about each one of you? Everyone's part, you're off mute. You want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to dive in. Check out our website, polimorphic.com. Reach out to me. My email's my first name at polymorphic.com. My closing thought is I think a lot of folks really want to provide a great experience in government. And I think that's going to become more and more important. And I'm seeing this energy from staff for, hey, we can do things different. And I would encourage that, right? I would say change is new, but we're seeing this unique moment. And I don't think you can just put your head in the sand and wait. I think now is the time for urgency. Now is the time to find those right partners who are going to help guide you through it. Obviously, we consider ourselves a great partner. Brandon, probably a great partner for as folks think about it. It's finding those partners. You don't know how to do this alone and jump into it. I think every moment you wait there's a cost. There's a cost of inaction, and don't pay that cost. Start early.
Brandon?
Thank you. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to have us on this podcast. And Parts, really nice to meet you as well. How to learn more about us, just our website as well, ichiplan.com, ichiplan.com, and a handful of different videos and information about the product. I think like similar to the message that Pars shared, I think a couple quick example I'd share is when we were at the California Building Officials Conference this year in April, the president was noting, hey, last year there was like, what is this AI thing? Is this going to be real? To this year it was, okay, this looks like a real thing. Now we need to figure out how to put it into action. And when I think of what next year is going to be like, it's going to be like, this is very real. There's a lot of people that are seeing a lot of success. As like a city manager, why am I not doing this? And so I think we've shifted to a world where it's less skepticism of, is this a real thing? Juxtaposed with, how do I implement this like safely, securely in a way that my staff can actually adopt in a reasonable time frame? And finding the right AI partners that you could work with through that, like they do exist. I think like Ichi and Polymorphic are good examples of that. I think this is a great time to take action and a great time to realize that there is a safe and reasonable way to adopt AI into jurisdiction. And it's what the communities want. Everybody wants a better quality of service. And this is one of the tools that can really help get there more quickly. Thank you very much for having us on the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate both of you for your time, and thanks for joining me. Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Ash, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.